Welcome, my friends, to Isengard. Or Tolkien with Friends, your regularly scheduled programming. And today we are, and I say we, but actually Callie is not with us today, but I'm sure we will have plenty to talk about because today
Yeah.
is kind of a special episode in that it's a little bit of an oops, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But Nick, so excited to have you back.
Hello.
Everyone, you've seen Nick on our special bonus episodes when we were talking about Rings of Power on our season 1 episodes, and so we're super excited to welcome him back.
Yeah. Thanks
And
for having me.
yeah, always, anytime. You know that. But before we dive in, one of the things that we've been doing this season, which I'm sure you're aware of, is talking about our own, like when it's your first time coming onto season 2, talking about our own personal histories with The Hobbit, and, to see how that kind of colors how we view the movies, how we view the books, because it is a little bit of a different animal in comparison to Lord of the Rings. So
Yeah.
just wanted to hear a bit from you. Like, how did the book and the movies come into your life?
Oh my gosh. So how did the book
Yeah, I want
come?
to. I want to know both. I want to know both stories.
So the book is the book. Like, my mom read me all sorts of amazing children's books, like
Mm-hmm.
Corduroy the Bear and all those cute
Yeah.
little things. I can't remember the exact age, but I want to say 6 or 7, she started reading me The Hobbit. I feel like my story is so like everyone else's in that it was a beloved book of her childhood, and
Mm.
she's one of 4 children, and they all loved those books and have instilled some form of love in their children. But
Sure.
I and one of my cousins are like the Tolkien freaks about it all, and I
Nice.
credit much of that to like not only The Hobbit, but how much that instilled in me a love of the traditional hero's journey, how that can be subverted in interesting ways, how it's not always about becoming this ultimate noble being that just keeps on going, like that one TikTok that was saying how much they hated The Hobbit. And I'm like, no, this is not how it works. Yeah, ding
that
dong.
that was
Um,
really painful.
it really was. But then that culminated in her getting me one. They republished them in the late 90s or early 2000s with Alan Lee art on the front only,
Yes.
the paperbacks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I still have my copy. It's falling apart. And in the front of it is an inscription from my mom saying, "To Nicholas on his 9th birthday, because you love a good story and also adventures. This will be the beginning of one of the most wonderful literary adventures ever written. All love, Mom."
Aw, mom.
And it's like, sun bleached and beaten to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this copy. This is still the copy that, like, I now own so many different editions of it that, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but this is the one that I feel like drawn to
Mm-hmm.
when I want to reread The Hobbit. And
Yeah.
I love
Totally.
that.
That's so interesting. I mean, you said that your story it feels like it's everybody's, but honestly, I mean, we've gotten so many different ones. Is there a typical like I don't know anymore because there's been so many different ones that I've been really surprised by. And I know
Yeah.
that my mom hadn't read them and she was
Hmm.
like I always wanted to and the movies were coming out, so we did it together.
Which I
Which
love. What a cute, like, bonding, right?
yeah,
And
I
you
think
were what, like 11?
yeah, something like that. I don't remember if like The Hobbit, if we just like I don't know. I know we read all of them at the same time, but then it
Hmm.
was really like with Lord of the Rings, it was like, okay, that was one where I really needed like help
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes.
But The Hobbit was like so up my alley and like perfect age wise, I felt like, you
It's
know.
kind of wild how, like, just rereading this chapter,
Mhm.
but then thinking back to like roast mutton,
Yeah.
like, or an unexpected party, like those 2 chapters. And or a short rest, and all that like first half of the book is so whimsical.
Yes.
This chapter has some real like serious tones to it that in many ways feel like almost akin with almost any passage of Lord of the Rings. Well, almost any Hobbit related passage of Lord of the Rings. And I don't
Yeah.
just mean the first few chapters. I mean like I don't know. It's kind of, and I know we'll talk about that, like I'm jumping ahead, but we'll talk about, to me this is where there's a pretty big shift in tone.
Mm-hmm.
But in that way, this book with Lord of the Rings as its sequel is like, I've never seen a series. I almost shiver to call it that because it's not really, but
Right.
like I've almost never seen a book series do that so perfectly well, where it's catering to one age group and
Mm-hmm.
then allows you to like it challenges you to read up to the level, but in a way that makes it accessible, not daunting.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's former favorite, now least favorite, Harry Potter did an okay job at that, but like they're just not nearly as well written as these books are.
Yeah. I mean, there's no denying that. It's just thinking about like the timeline, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like with, he wrote this kind of as an accident, like mainly for his kids, and then they were all begging
So cute.
for a sequel, and that's one thing that I love about Lord of the Rings is that you feel that in those first few chapters, like it really feels like okay, we're back in a way,
Yep.
but
Yep.
then things go on a different path, and I just think that that is one of the coolest things ever. It makes me wonder, like, had he been able to put the Silmarillion together himself rather
Yeah.
than Chris, like how he would have maybe done things a little bit differently as far as like packaging them or narratively, or I don't know, because it all seemed to flow so well, and obviously like we're working with what we got, and I don't not want it. You know what
No,
I
for
mean?
sure,
But
for sure. But like you read, especially Children of Hurin, and that feels so perfectly at home in itself
yeah,
that I almost wonder if the way those were released is so modern though, like
yeah,
contemporary to our time, but like
yeah.
those three, the great tales, feel almost better. I blasphemy, I know, as standalones
Yeah.
than they do as even though like especially the Fall of Gondolin is like almost more like a manuscript history. Like here's all
Yeah.
the different pieces and parts, not stitched together as one narrative. But
Mm-hmm.
in any case, that feels good, and I wonder if he would have done that with everything that's in the
Yeah.
Silmarillion, like a slightly more fleshed out multiple book. Who knows?
I
Who
wonder
knows?
that.
Yeah.
And there is things like with the Akalabeth and stuff where it is more like you kind of know some of this already, but it's like broad
Mm-hmm.
strokes, it's pretty short. And I understand that he is also a guy that doesn't always give you all the details anyway.
Almost by design, or
Yeah.
definitely by design.
I mean, absolutely. I
Oh,
mean,
you've just given me an excuse to say my favorite Mike Drought concept, textual ruins.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
He does that intentionally. It makes the world feel bigger
Yeah.
without feeling like. Let's compare him to Anna's favorite,
Yes.
who makes the world feel big by giving you all of the detail.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I honestly prefer Tolkien's because it makes
And for
you
everybody that doesn't know what Nick is talking about, he's talking about Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Oh yes, duh, duh. Well, they should know because they
They
should have
should
listened to
know.
season one with
You're,
Anna.
you're very correct.
I will be your hype man person being all day,
Thank you.
and Anna's too, and
Yes.
Callie's. We miss Callie too.
Yeah.
You also asked me about the movies, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
think that the Rankin and Bass film is almost as important to me being the Lord of the Rings fan that I am
Mm-hmm.
as
And then how did that affect you when Peter's Hobbit was coming out?
so Rankin and Bass. I watched that movie. I could be exaggerating from like little kid memory, but I'm pretty sure we there was a chunk of time where we went to Family Video and got the VHS once a week
Mm-hmm.
for months.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, then it would turn to like a few times a year. For some reason, we never bought it because we were fools.
I
But
feel like you definitely overpaid for it at the amount of times that you
oh,
rented it.
absolutely, we did. Not only that, but my buddy who works at like a record and used like media store in
Yeah.
Chicago I get like his friends and family discount. So he'll save things for me, and then when I visit him or he visits home and we're both home together or whatever, he will sell them to me at way cheaper. And so I got like the DVD of that and the DVD of the Lord of the Rings. I don't think I have oh no, I did get the Return of the King. Woohoo! But I'm not Tim, so I will not sing Frodo of the Nine Fingers.
We were all thinking it.
He's so good at that too.
I know.
But I don't know, like that was so emblematic. I say a lot of things, recent films included. Like I really liked the most recent adaptation of Dune. I thought that was a very, very good adaptation. It was very true to the things that it was true to the what's that line from Tolkien's letter? Um, it was true to like the canons of narrative art in that it conveys the point of Dune the way the book does through a
Yeah.
different medium. Like it does it as, in my opinion, as well as the book does it. That doesn't mean it's true to the book in every sense, but it still evokes much of the same
Yeah.
like mystery and all that stuff. And to me, the Rankin and Bass Hobbit, even though it's missing a couple things, namely Bjorn, also does that very, very well. And so I had extremely high hopes for the Peter Jackson movie.
Yeah.
And honestly, they were met by the first half of the first movie. I was super excited seeing it in theaters while I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it enough that I think I saw it 3 or 4 times in theaters and was like, yeah, okay. I see what they're doing. I would have done things differently, but I'm okay with it. Second movie rolls around, and I'm like, okay, could have done without those barrels. Um, and then this piece of shit.
Yeah, and what is fun about today is that I really should have folded today's chapter, which is not at home, into the last episode. But because The Hobbit's so short, like I broke it up over each chapter. However, it's effectively not in the movie. So in
I know you call that an oops, but I actually
yeah,
think this chapter is a perfect example of. Remember what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where the
yeah.
Hobbit is young kids can read it, but it leads them into a thought process. Like it challenges you at parts.
Mm-hmm.
It is a book that, by modern reader standards, requires a little bit of either proficiency or commitment, and that's okay. Like not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing parts like this. You're missing parts like A Thief in the Night. Like those
Yeah.
parts of like really seeing character development of all of the characters, even the 13 dwarves who are essentially one monolithic thing. You see the shift in the characters in a way that like the movies just they really mess it all up. And I'm not even going to talk about fucking gold dragon bullshit.
No, we did that last time,
Good.
and I don't even. Yeah, it's funny because in this chapter they address how hard it is to fight a dragon in a way, and it's just so funny, like juxtaposing it against the previous scene in the movie where they tried to drench him in molten gold. And anyway,
Fools.
so so I was thinking about this and I was like, of course they cut this out based on all of the other decisions that they made. You
Yes.
know, like in this chapter, the dwarves and Bilbo have been waiting they're essentially trapped in that secret passage that leads
Yeah.
to the dragon's hoard. And after waiting many hours of hearing nothing from Smog, they head, down into the inside of Erebor. In the movie, there's no wondering what Smog is up to because they fully antagonize this dragon and watch as he flies off to Lake Town. Like, no question about where this guy went. Bilbo even is like, what did we do? Made an oops, is what Shagun did. And, with that being said, there are moments in this chapter that are incorporated into parts of the
Oh,
movies.
for sure.
Some that we've already seen, like Bilbo finding the Arkenstone, sort of, and parts we'll see later in the movie, The Battle of the Five Armies, such as Thorin giving Bilbo the mithril shirt. Uh, and so this is not the last time we'll talk about some of these things, but today I thought it'd be nice, kind of a little break from the movies, and we could talk about some of the character things that are going on here.
Yeah, for sure.
And how they're different from the movies in the book, and really whatever else we want to gush about.
I like your plan though, because yeah, like I said, I just think this chapter, not the only one, but it's a good example of like it builds suspense in a. You know what? I have. This is like a totally new. I don't know if I'm as deep as I think I am. Moment. Um, but okay, if you're reading The Lord of the Rings in the 3-volume version,
Yeah.
so put yourself back in like 56, 57, I think is when the books came out, or 54, 55, whatever.
Yeah, mid 50s for
Mid
sure.
50s, yes. So book one comes out, or volume one comes out, and I want to say July. Volume two comes out in November. So everyone gets to like read those two books. They don't come out. The next book doesn't come out for I think all over a year after that. So they're just sitting in suspense. Like, is Frodo dead?
Yeah.
Like, you get the cliffhangers that end each book within the volume,
Mm-hmm.
especially the last few.
Yeah.
Like, this chapter is that. Like, we don't know exactly what's going on with Smaug.
So, yeah, in the books, we are essentially trapped inside the mountain with the dwarves, and they have no idea what happened. The last they heard of Smog, he ruined the secret door that they worked
Mm-hmm.
so hard to find. And, juxtaposing that with the movie, they are fully running around and very aware that Smog has left the building. But, flashing back to the book, they have just kind of been. I mean, I can't imagine it's been so many hours of total darkness. It's hot, it's stuffy, still dragon stank. And,
Not to mention dwarf and hobbit stank.
yeah, and so they're just like sitting there, but also so terrified
Mm-hmm.
because Smog could show up again. Who knows? They're just like waiting for any kind of sound, and then eventually Thorin is just like, I can't take it anymore. Let's try to open this door, and then they realize, oh, he like really messed it up. Um, and what I really like about this, it's like the first page of the chapter.
Yes.
But really, like, just as the dwarves are beginning to despair and like thinking that they will die trapped in this passageway, Tolkien writes, but somehow, just when the dwarves were most despairing, Bilbo felt a strange lightening of the heart, as if a heavy weight had gone from under his waistcoat. Come, come, he said. While there's life, there's hope. Before stating that he's going to venture into the dragon's lair once more, and that the dwarves ought to come with him this time. And I've always been so intrigued by this passage, not only because it's, and yet another example of Bilbo's leadership, like stepping up into that role when no one else kind of will.
And growth.
Yes. Yes.
Random TikToker who thinks Bilbo doesn't change.
I didn't even remember her handle.
I don't either.
Like,
thank God that video didn't get more engagement than it did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But, oh my gosh.
It was a bad take because
It was sophomoric.
Yeah,
There's an SAT word for you.
I,
Jesus.
and honestly, like, and we don't talk like that about other
No.
fans ever, but I've just never seen, and I wouldn't even call her a fan. Like, she just read it and was like disappointed.
Yes. Which, like, you do not need to like this book, but don't come for it with misreadings. Like, you do.
Yeah,
This is not a book for everyone. I'm not saying, but that, like, that's just like wrong. I'm
yeah,
sorry, but that's like not true if you read the book closely
yeah,
or even passively.
or just like skim it.
Yeah. Like, because
So
he ends where he began physically, it's not growth. Anyway, we are going way off on that.
Nick, keep it together. Keep it together.
The first of many times you'll have to tell me to rein it in.
It's all right. It's all right. So Bilbo is. I just love that lightning of the heart bit. And now I'm not sure what time it is, like it in the
Yeah,
world, but I've always wondered: is this like Bilbo act like feeling the moment that
the sun comes
Smog
up.
meet? Is it related to Smog and Bard's arrow?
Wow.
Or is it just like something
Andy,
that
I have read this
happens?
book so many times and I have never thought of that. That's a really cool guess. That's a really cool guess. Okay, maybe, but
I
I think no.
Okay.
I think
This is the thing. It's like I'm kind of confused about how much time's passed. So like,
which is a really cool device of the chapter.
yeah,
Like, how neat that we get this, like, kind of scary, kind of intense moment with Smaug,
yeah,
and then he right at the end, like, talking about Barrel Rider. You keep feet came from the water side up the water, and you came without a doubt. I don't know your smell, but if you are not one of those men of the lake, you had their help. They shall see me and remember who is the real king under the mountain. Like,
yeah.
that's so he rose in fire and went away south towards the running river. Like, dun dun dun.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the key word here is when the dwarves were the most despairing. And so
Mm-hmm.
that conjures to my mind Gandalf's line about despair being for those who can see the end beyond all doubt.
Mm.
And it's there that,
So
like,
you think it's more of like a juxtaposition between the like dwarves and hobbits,
I don't know if I would
or
go.
Bilbo, and do you know what I mean?
I think that it is a juxtaposition of Bilbo's growth versus the overall growth. But it is interesting that Thorin, as is usual, Thorin is the named dwarf,
Yeah.
and then it says neither key nor the magic in it, nor the magic it had once obeyed would ever open that door again. And then we are trapped. They groaned. This is the
Mm-hmm.
end. We shall die here. Personal headcanon, if you want to call it that. I don't imagine Thorin was involved in that groan
Yeah.
because, especially as we see him in a few pages, I think he would rather go, like, if he can't go feel the wind on his face, as he says, I think he would want to go die in his gold.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
there's
think
that. He has that hope still. The other dwarves are like,
they don't really have as much skin in the game, right?
exactly. So Bill, but okay. I'm gonna skip ahead. I know that you're gonna give your amazing rendition, but there's one line that I think really helps. I'm just gonna mention this, and then we can talk about it when we get there.
Yeah.
So throughout the book, he talks about wanting to be back home, eating bacon and
Yeah.
eggs, or back home by his fire with the kettle about to sing, like, constantly wanting to be back
Always.
home, back home, back home. And that's his, like, remembering a thing that makes him comfortable to help him get through this. What in this chapter does he conjure up to help him remember something that brings him hope? Beorn's house, not his
Mm,
house. That's a place that was like, he was scared going into Beorn's house. He was scared in it
mm-hmm.
because of the bears outside.
Right.
Like, that's full on took. That's full on the Took side of Bilbo just coming out in full force. And so I really do think it's a setup for Bilbo just being like,
Yeah.
the only way out is through,
Yeah.
is kind of Bilbo's, like, he never says that, but that sort of mentality.
Yeah, I totally hear you. The only reason that I suggested potentially it having to do with Smaug's death is that we get stuff like that in Lord of the Rings where Frodo will suddenly like he sees when Gandalf returns. You know what I mean? Like we have these
Yeah.
like divine intervention moments.
Well, and
And
this is like, okay, to back you up. Sorry to cut you off.
no.
To back you up,
I'm
if
just
we're
gonna be wheezing through this whole episode.
this is what we do. Um, Now, the One Ring, any edition of The Hobbit, was not really the ring. Like, all of
Yeah.
that is like retconned in
Yeah.
via the Lord of the Rings. But because of that retconning, could this be a moment where you could make an argument that Frodo has those moments of like clarity, of clairvoyance, of almost like Aragorn level foresight,
Mhm.
or not foresight, but like you say, seeing the coming back of Gandalf, or his dream about Gandalf on the roof of Orthanc.
Mhm.
Those moments may be heightened by the fact that he was bearing the ring. The ring was kind of like opening up that part of his brain that's closed
Right.
off because he's a simple provincial hobbit. You could argue that with the knowledge we have from the Lord of the Rings, that Bilbo has a little bit of that kind of extra
Yeah.
juice.
Maybe.
Maybe,
I
maybe
don't know.
we're just speculating here.
Okay, so they go into the mountain. They all are like, "Yeah, okay. Let's get out of here." Dwarves still very much not into going full on into the room. And Bilbo does kind of tumble out of the, the tunnel. And they're like,
Yes,
"What?"
adorably.
But I get it. It is, I mean, it really just reemphasizes how freaking dark it is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Except Bilbo sees a pale white glint above him and far off in the gloom. And, so he asks for a light, and I think it's Glowin and Owen get torches. So Bilbo can go investigate. Notably, the dwarves are not ready to investigate quite yet. Still very nervous about Smaug.
They're a cautious folk.
They sure are. And they're like, you know what? Bilbo, you got that ring. You go do your thing. And
It's true. I mean, they know that at this
they
point.
do.
So that's, yeah.
They're like, you go for it, burglar. And he investigates this pale glint, and only to find none other than the Arkenstone. And I was thinking about this, so because I didn't truly remember the Arkenstone having its own kind of like light that it emits, but props to the movies for 100% doing that. Like they fold this into when Bilbo was speaking with Smaug because
The second time, right?
like he only ever talks to, he goes in and it's immediately Smaug. Like
That's true.
Bilbo
Oh, that's true. That
in
in
the
the
movie, Bilbo does not, like in the book he says third time pays for all, as in this is going to be the third time he ventures
down the
down into the
yes,
mountain. It's a one and done deal in the movies, which
I
sad.
I get it.
Um
I like. Let's just think about the. It makes sense from a
yes.
production standpoint. Like,
Fine. It
it,
does make sense.
I don't like it though because we know that threes, sevens, nines are
Mhm.
important numbers to Tolkien, and even if they were just the numbers that he chose to make important, and
Yeah.
so third time pays for all feels like a fortuitous thing,
Yeah.
knowing that like three rings for the Elven Lords and et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
that, yeah, it's interesting.
So
Um,
he, because in the movie, it's like they also kind of they do take the Smaug scene, and I do think it's pretty good. But there is a lot of like tumbling over all this gold and like trying to get to this Arkenstone because we have kind of changed the importance. We have movie lore about the Arkenstone, right? And I feel like the changes they make with this gem have kind of ripple effects on how these characters are able to grow and change. So I
Very.
know I know that we've talked in the previous episodes about how they've created this storyline about whoever possesses it, the Arkenstone, can like claim kingship over all the dwarves and unite them, with the idea being that Thorin, you know, understands that not all these his 13 dwarves and Bilbo can't take on Smaug, but they do try, so it kind of goes against that premise
Yep.
because they try. Anyway, so it sets him up to like understand that he can't take on Smaug by himself, but then they add that whole scene anyway, which I'm just realizing like live with you right now, and because I wrote my notes about how like, oh, they're kind of giving Thorin some credit there, and then I'm like, well, why the hell do they have this
Well,
gold scene anyway?
we'll talk
So
about that in a bit, I think. Yeah.
yeah, so really, Bilbo's job is to burgle the Arkenstone specifically,
In the
uh,
movie, yeah.
in the movie. In the movie, so that's really like it has a little bit more intent behind it in movie Thorin than book Thorin, who, after Bilbo talks to Smaug and is really kind of shaken about the dwarves' intentions because of
Yes.
Smaug's kind of wordplay
Yes.
and manipulation, and Thorin really assures Bilbo that nope, they didn't have a plan after getting to the door. They were just kind of hoping for the best, and to kind of reassure him that like no, we weren't trying to like
Scam you.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that
Don't fall for that dragon spell.
yeah, so but it is kind of colors Thorin a little differently. I think it is kind of like taken away by the gold thing, but
Yeah.
logically it was there, kinda. But
Well, and
then
let's
yeah,
not
you
let's
go.
not forget that the literal plan of the Lord of the Rings is, let's not think too hard about it and have faith. Let's have like the type of hope that they're planning on is Estelle, which is more like faith than I hope I win the lottery.
Mhm.
And by having that, things work, like they fall into the plan, they fall
Mhm.
into the music better. And I know the dwarves don't think that way, but that's essentially what's happening. Like all of the things that happened feel like, why didn't they make a better decision there? But if they had made a better decision, they likely would have failed. If they had
Mhm.
come with weapons, if they had come with better knowledge or warriors or whatever, instead of Bilbo,
Mhm.
who literally stumbles into the room,
Mhm.
things would have not gone as well. I like,
Yeah.
who knows what it would have happened when the Battle of Five Armies broke out if it hadn't have gone that way. And we
Who
get
knows?
little hints of this stuff, like back to the bit about hope that we were talking about. Like, while there's life, there's hope. Like,
Mhm.
please tattoo that on my forehead. Oh my gosh,
That's one of my favorite quotes from
it's so good. It's
yeah.
so good.
And we see that quote again.
Mhm.
It's not the last time we're gonna read that, which I love.
Yes, same. Here is the annotated Hobbit by Douglas Anderson, which just has The Hobbit with lots of annotations in it. And it's amazing. And if you don't own it, you should buy it. It is worth all the extra money because it's beautiful, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
There's art from a bunch of different international things. Like, for example, there's Bilbo with like a little torch and
Oh, nice.
bats and stuff. It's so cute. But anyway, there's a kind of lengthy sidebar about the Arkenstone,
Mm.
and this is in part what a mutual of mine, he had a series of videos about how the Arkenstone is not a Silmaril in the in world sense, but that it kind of literally is in the writing of this, because the Hobbit originally was not going to fit into his overall what he'd been writing since he was a teen.
Right.
So, but he was
That's
borrowing.
wild to think about.
Don't even get me started on that. But
Okay, I won't.
he was drawing on it. Like he was like, "Oh, that character Elrond. Let's sprinkle him in here." Oh, originally Gandalf was Bledorthin. Like, we'll not even touch that one. But he's drawing from that the deep elves, the sea elves, and the is it the fair
Hmm.
elves? Is that what he calls the Vanyar in the Hobbit? Anyway, whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
He's essentially referencing his own mythology, never expecting anyone else to read any of it. And so in that way, the Arkenstone draws really remarkable parallels. So while no, if you read the entirety of the works, the Arkenstone is not a Silmaril, I am less annoyed by people that think it is than
sure.
others are. Because, and I'll even go into it. So I won't read this whole thing because it is long, but there's a little bit of interesting etymology here. Um,
Hmm.
the name Arkenstone comes from the Anglo-Saxon um, Eorklanstan, meaning precious stone. The word, found also in slightly varying forms, it's the same thing, just written differently, is originally from Beowulf. A couple nights ago, when I was reading to prep for this, I read the Old English or the Anglo-Saxon and was like, I'm going to try to read this. No, I'm not. It's really weird. But that section that it's in translates to fate struck him down, where in his pride he went looking for woe, a feud with the Frisians. He wore the finery, those precious stones, over the cup of the sea, that powerful lord, and collapsed under his shield. Which, by the way, this is where Tolkien got the name Theoden.
Mm.
It like that powerful lord is Rise Theoden,
Mm.
with that thorn, that weird symbol that looks like a P, but it's pronounced TH.
Yeah.
Sorry, I could keep going. Um, there's a quote from Christopher Tolkien later from The Shaping of Middle Earth where he talks about. So Tolkien was translating a bunch of stuff about Valinor into Anglo Saxon, and he used the word Eorkden Stannis to refer to the Silmarils. So the
Mm.
real world Anglo Saxon word for precious stone is the word that he used for the Silmarils, and then he what's the word? Is it transliteration? I don't know. He basically just modernized that into art.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty neat, I think.
Yeah. That is cool. I mean, it's kind of like, what does it make me think of? Like rectangles and squares. Like
Mm-hmm.
a rectangle or a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't necessarily a square.
Yes.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
like they're all four things are precious stones that mean a
Yeah.
lot, but one is not like the other. Yes, I
Yeah.
I like that analogy. That works for my brain.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just like the Silmarils are Arkenstones, but this Arkenstone is not a Silmaril in that Feanor didn't have anything to do with it.
Feanor had nothing to do with it. It can be touched by mortals. It can be touched by anyone, good or bad.
Yeah.
It can be fastened. They can cut it. You can't cut a
Yes.
Silmaril.
Exactly. And the dwarves did cut this one so that, it kind of changes the light that touches it,
Yes.
which is pretty cool. And it's one of those things where it was like found, not so much made, and they just kind of refined it to,
Yes.
I mean, not unlike when you think about Gimli in
The
the
glittering
the
caves.
Glittering
Yeah.
Caves. Yeah, just talking about, I love that Legolas, like, at first totally misunderstands like what the dwarves' deal is. You know what I mean? He's like,
That's
no,
like
no, we
one of
don't
the best
hack at
moments.
this. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that that's kind of an example of that here with the Arkenstone, where it's like it's so beautiful, and it's so beautiful that I think it kind of makes Bilbo act a little bit out of character because he knows how much meaningful it is to Thorin. And I know that we haven't seen it yet in the movie. Him taking it, I know that he is trying to get it to Thorin. Smaug kind of knocks it away, like he's like, "Nope, you don't get to have it yet." We know that he does get it later, but when he finds it in the book, he's like feeling very proud of himself that he found it, and is like, if I could, I would like to have this as my whole 14th share, and they can have the rest because that pretty. but he has that feeling in his gut that I'm pretty sure that's not what Thorin meant. But he still takes it,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, is kind of interesting for Bilbo. And here, we also have like in the movie they've already set up this idea of like dragon sickness, and like the hold that it may have over Thorin at some point. And we haven't seen that yet exactly, but we do know that as readers that Thorin is keeping his eyes peeled for the Arkenstone. But I also think it's interesting that he's imparted to Bilbo and group like that the Arkenstone is important to them, but that he isn't actually telling anybody that he's keeping his eyes peeled for it.
Right. It's more like covetous of him. Like
Yeah.
he's truly coveting it to the point of not even highlighting it, because by highlighting it, this is where we already see like the seeds of Thorin's downfall, book Thorin and movie Thorin, where like he is. I read it as he doesn't talk to them about it in the book that explicitly because he doesn't want to fill them with the same lust for it that he has.
Hmm.
Maybe.
Maybe that could be a thought process. It is interesting because we've never really seen like a secretive side to this before. But we do have, I think, another difference between Thorin and the book is that he is the one, he has like stuck up for Bilbo many a time, but movie Thorin has already expressed that he is like okay with leaving Bilbo behind multiple times, and book Thorin has not done that.
Book Thorin's honorable. Movie Thorin is haughty. He's kind of a jerk. I mean, I love like don't get me wrong, Richard Armitage, you did a fantastic job with what you were given.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it talk about freaking character whiplash. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
absolutely. It's an interesting choice because I feel like Bilbo has had like once like Bilbo has proven himself multiple times, and I would say in both versions of the story. But when he does it in the book, I feel like it's Tolkien really makes note that they are very much appreciative of what he's done for them. Whereas I feel like in the movie they like forget it every time. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And it's like he's starting from scratch every time he does something nice for them. Um,
Exactly. Oh, it's
which
so
I'm
annoying.
like, what a tough relationship to be in. Like you just met these guys a few months ago, and you go out and like you're just kind of getting kicked around every
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
But when Bilbo gets in trouble, even in this chapter, just because his light went out and he kind of freaks out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Thorin is the one that is like, "All right, let's go
Go get
help
him.
this guy." Yeah,
Yeah.
he says like get another light or two. It seems we have to go and get our burglar. So we've got kind of like Bilbo kind of acting weird, Thorin kind of acting weird, but still everyone's pretty much still chill, pretty good. And I think that we've talked about this with like I think Bilbo has really shown the most character growth in the book at this point, but Thorin really still is like their leader,
Yes.
and he's shown his commitment to the company and like not just trying to succeed, but also like making sure nobody dies.
Yes.
Yes. With the whole bomber situation with Door, and there's multiple times where he's like he comes in when needed and
Yes.
kind of lays down the law a little bit.
Yes.
And but I'm not sure I can say the same for movie Thorin. He
Nope.
seems like kind of a jerk
It
in that
it's
respect.
it's almost like they yet another example of why those movies didn't work as three
Yeah.
is there's not enough in this book has a lot, especially if you supplement it with the appendices, which they did, and I was happy they did that.
Yeah.
I was even okay with 75% of the White Council stuff.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the last battle's a little over the top, but whatever. Cool to see the Nazgul, I guess.
Wait, what? Dude, I do not remember this movie like at all.
Oh wait, that might be a no. That's in the theatrical.
I don't know.
That might be because
I've seen this like once. I don't. I
I
really
don't
don't
think,
know.
and I don't think you've ever seen the extended, right?
Mm-mm.
Until this time.
Now, yeah, we're doing it right meow.
All
Oh,
right, I won't spoil that for you because that part
maybe you
is
should
interesting.
in a bad way.
You get to see Saruman Matrix fight. Anyway,
Good for Christopher Lee.
it was a choice. Not nearly as cool as Count Dooku fighting Yoda, I will say. So
Mm.
anyway, that is arguably one of the best lightsaber fights. Anyway, this is not a podcast about Star Wars. I'm sorry,
No, but I do love Count Dooku just because Christopher.
Christopher
I
Lee.
mean, I will say though that like Clone Wars the cartoon really did something for Count Dooku as well.
It
I
did.
was like, ooh, I like this guy.
Clone Wars the cartoon makes the prequel trilogy make sense and makes it okay.
Yeah,
Without that show, fuck those movies. Anyway,
yeah,
um, back to the book. We were just talking about the character stuff,
yeah.
and I just had one other thing on the Thorin front.
Sure.
Like we see, despite him coveting the Arkenstone, despite the bewilderment, as we're going to get to in a bewitchment of the treasure, he still is thinking of Bilbo and rewarding him and
Yeah,
thanking him. Like the it seems we have to go and help our burglar. I read that in like only a loving, caring tone
yeah,
versus like, ah, damn it, we got to go get him because he got caught by these trolls. Like, ugh, crap. Like, there's like a begrudging helping him, like, or a helping him because he's a person being attacked by truly evil creatures.
yeah,
That's why they help him in roast mutton. Here, it's this is a member of our party and we need to help him.
yeah. And I think that really helps that he doesn't start with that. Like, well, it's like he's like, come, one of you get a lighter too.
Yep.
We got stuff that we're. He's like, we cannot hide in this little hole anymore. They're hearing him squeak help from who knows where. So they go after him. And so that's and then Bilbo, as soon as he sees the light again, he starts feeling better. Which who doesn't when it's dark like that?
When it's that dark, oh my gosh.
Yeah, because the Arkenstone has made its way into Bilbo's pocket, so he doesn't have that little glow anymore.
Yes.
Kind of low key surprised it doesn't. I mean, I guess it doesn't shine through pants. I guess that's something that we have learned. It's got its own thing going, but not through pants.
And the fact that it has its own light, like, is it the cause of both the glow that he sees far off, like in the gloom? Isn't there one like above too that he sees? I don't think it's shining that much that it's like radiating really brightly.
Yeah, it was enough for him to find it, I
Right.
think.
But
But
if it's that pitch black,
but I'm guessing it was probably like catching some other kind of light.
yeah, it's
With
like it because the Silmarils are described in a similar way, where like they have their own, but they also catch and reflect and amplify other light too,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense because they're the light of the Valar, like
Right.
encapsulated
Literally.
literally. So like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's not a Silmaril, so let's stop talking about that and talk about maybe this other artifact with a cool name drop. Are we there yet?
What? Oh, what we're talking about?
Are you ready for that?
I am. I am. So okay. So they again, we don't get any of this like exploring stuff in the movie because we're so hyper focused on trying to take down Smog, which is
Because it's 3.5 hours of action.
it is it, and that's one thing like that we noted way back with like Overhill and Underhill. So I'm just like so exhausted by these movies. It's hard to like be really invested because it's just constant. There's no breathers like this.
If I
And
want this, I'm going to watch John Wick.
yeah, there you go. There you
Not
go.
this.
Not
Like,
the Hobbit.
not
Yeah.
the Hobbit.
And so instead of pouring molten lava on our good friend Smog, they are kind of like so now they're out in it. They had to go help Bilbo, and now they're like, oh well, this is kind of cool, and they're not like as scared at this moment. And they find the mail and their weapons, and they begin to arm themselves.
And the
And
musical instruments. I love that they find those before they arm themselves.
yes, so I think it's Feely and Keely that are
Yes.
rocking out while everyone else is kind of just like touching the gold and like
Mhm.
filling their pockets and feeling
Stuffing
pretty
them with
good.
jewels. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And then they, they find the mail and the weapon. They're like hanging on the wall, which I think is interesting. I feel like the movie really gave the impression that Smog has taken every single ounce of anything good and piled it all together. But he did not take things off the wall.
Right.
Those are still there.
Not the musical instruments, not the coats of gold plated rings, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, any armaments at all. Yeah, it's almost like he likes to see them as trophies because they're
Mm-hmm.
symbols of people who think they could defy him and they absolutely couldn't.
Yeah, I think that it's like I don't know, but personally, I'm just if I were a dragon, I would probably be like, I'm gonna leave some of the decorations up because
Yeah,
I live here now.
I would want to like where I live.
Yeah, just enough gold to lay on. Not like he doesn't burrow. He does in the movie. We
He
saw
does.
that, and that's really our only time to kind of savor the gold. I feel like with Bilbo is
Yeah,
when he's climbing around looking for the Arkenstone. It's very interesting because usually where Peter will just cut straight to the moment that Tolkien leads up to. That's the only time where they slowly build the Smog instead of just like because in the book it's very different and it's like boom, there's a dragon right in front of
right,
you.
right, right, right. Which I actually like that choice. Like if you're gonna change something, I like that they turned it into a little bit of suspense. Like they
Mm-hmm.
leaned
Where
into
is
the
he?
fact that they only have so much money to pay Benedict Cumberbatch and the folks at Weta Digital to make Smaug. So they make every second count by building the tension before you see him,
Mm-hmm.
which in a certain sense is helping replace the tension that we get in this chapter. Not
Mm-hmm.
enough to justify, in my opinion, the choices they made, but they don't
Yeah.
completely leave that out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when they're arming themselves, and if memory serves, in the movie, Thorn and Company they're gonna do this in Battle of the Five Armies, which we are about to watch. But they don't do this until they're like actively feeling threatened by like the men of Lake Town and such. But in the book, they are wearing armor. I think it's mostly because it's just there, but also they do still think a dragon could show up at any moment. And this is when Bilbo receives his small coat of mail, wrought for some young elf prince long ago. Thorin does not say that in the movie. I did go back to kind of see real quick how that scene played out in the movie. Just that quick part, but he also gets a light helm of figured leather, which I thought was cool.
And
Uh,
that helmet actually comes into more play than we realize, I think,
right.
in the actual battle. This is another
Wow.
interesting spot where there's a cool little sidebar. It's not nearly as long, but this is one of the very subtle changes that Tolkien made between the first edition and the
Mm.
60s edition. So in the original, so the passage as we see it in the edition that we're probably all reading from, with that, he put on Bilbo a small coat of mail wrought for some young elf prince long ago. It was of silver steel, which the elves called mithril, and with it went a belt of pearls and crystals, a light helm, blah blah blah, like we were just talking about. And that the original, the first edition was it was of silvered steel, ornamented with pearls, and with it went a belt of pearls and crystals. Uh,
Ah.
Very subtle change, same basic amount of words, but he didn't use the word mithril.
Mm-hmm.
So he inserted it to tie it back to Lord of the Rings and therefore make it more cohesive, um,
Mm.
which is also cool because you don't get any of this context. But mithril, quick trivia for you, Andy. In Middle Earth,
Yeah.
not all of Arda, but in Middle Earth, where's the only place you can find mithril?
Moria.
Yes. This is not Moria.
Sure isn't. Ooh, so this is old.
This is old.
Oh,
This
oh my
this is
god.
cool.
Why
Yeah.
have I never thought of that?
Well, you could argue that it came from Moria while Moria still exists. Well, but this came
Yeah,
before the founding of Erebor at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Wow.
So, you think we know who this elf prince was?
Someone was speculating like could have been Eärendil or Elrond or Elros
Would they have been tiny enough? When
when they were kiddos.
I'm just thinking, like, I guess it depends on at which point in Moria's history or Khazad-dûm's history that
Yes.
this was made.
Very true.
Because obviously, Mithril's got some staying power. So,
Which ironically, and I learned this shout out Prancing Pony, gold lasts way longer than silver does. Silver like literally rots if it's
mm-hmm.
not preserved. So it's
Right.
really interesting that Tolkien uses silver as almost a more valuable thing than gold in many ways. And I
Sure.
don't know, it's cool.
Because it's like, but it's not, it like looks silver, but it's not silver.
Right. Maybe this is a movie invention and they've poisoned me, but like someone
Mm.
calls it like true silver. Um,
Oh, yeah. I think
yeah.
that's the thing.
Anyway, it and I love it too because so we get this if I may continue as
Go.
I love Bilbo saying I feel magnificent but I
That's
expect
literally my next note.
right.
So, keep going. Sorry.
We are twins listeners so
Yeah.
it's okay.
We
Um,
share one brain.
we share one brain. It's a crazy brain but I feel magnificent, he thought, but I expect I look rather absurd. How they would laugh at me on the hill at home. Still, I wish there was a looking glass handy. And I love that that's his thinking back home. Like we
Yeah.
talked about earlier and what's coming up in a minute here. Like when he needs a moment of clarity, he doesn't think about home. In fact, he thinks about home to be like, I must be absurd, but like I feel kind of cool right now. Like
Yeah.
I'm, we're not out of the woods yet. Like we don't know what's up with the dragon, but like
I feel like that resonates probably with anybody that has ever left their hometown and they're like,
yes.
oh,
Oh,
like
what would
you're
they think
doing
of me
stuff.
now?
Yeah. Be like, I'm so beyond them. You know what I mean? Kind
Hmm.
of moment. And it's also funny because I know we're going to talk about this later when it actually happens in the movie, but when I was rewatching that quick little clip, Bilbo says the absurd thing. They don't keep the magnificent thing. And I thought that was pretty sad.
That is sad.
The way that Bilbo was, I mean, if I said it once, I've said it a bajillion times. Like, the way that they treat Bilbo in these movies is
A
just,
crime.
yeah, a movie crime.
A movie crime. Well, especially because, like, if for nothing else, it's called The Hobbit and it's kind of barely about him.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even say that it is.
Not this movie.
Mm-mm.
This movie, it is, it's interesting. The Battle of Five Armies, Bilbo is more like any of the four hobbits in the Fellowship in that we are seeing it through his eyes by and large, but
Yeah.
he's not necessarily the main character all of the time. He's just the perspective that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't make him like it's not about his growth in the movie. It's not about his importance to the anything. I don't know. And it's because they had to make everyone a hero, which I get. Like you're hiring all these people, we should make us care about them. But like
But do we?
I certainly I'd
Do you
like
know what I mean? Like,
I feel bad for Feely's the blonde one, right?
yeah.
I feel bad for how he dies. Obviously, Keeley is like they use movie magic to make you feel something when he dies, but like even that's sus by because of the fucking Tariel anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think it's just like they. I mean, it's kind of back to the like something we've talked about before with like the tone of these movies, and like they can never quite figure it out. And by like trying to do so much, we get lost.
Yes.
And we're very lost. Like, as a viewer, in the writer's room, like, wherever you land on this movie, it's overwhelming, and it's hard to, and where they had a very clear vision of, like, the Lord of the Rings, like, we know that there's timelines, and like they had to mash things together. Like, we've been through that, but they were very clear about, this is about Frodo and the ring,
Yep.
and how do
Yep.
we push that forward through all this other stuff that's going on. So there was like they decided on like a through line to kind of ground us.
And it
um
worked. Like, those movies are not without their faults, but it worked, and it by and large sticks to the core of the original. Like, those movies convey much of what Tolkien meant to convey. Not perfectly, especially not the third movie. Interesting that that's true for this too. I
yeah,
love Return of the King. I think it's interesting that that's everyone's favorite, and I wonder how much of that is because it's the one that won the Oscar.
maybe.
I don't know, because like, to me,
Fellowship all
The
day.
Fellowship's the best. It's scary. It
It's
feels like
perfect.
the book. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, no
um,
notes.
no notes. Y'all
um
killed it.
yeah, so it's just like,
We do
I
get
don't know.
lost.
Yeah, there's just so much going on, and on top of losing Bilbo, they add in all this other stuff that's just like, I don't know. Like, it's hard. It's been hard as far as like just trying to think about it objectively. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I don't want to dislike these movies,
I
but
know. Well, I think I'm probably deluding myself into thinking I'm more objective than I am, like most men do. Um, to
yeah.
me, the first movie is genuinely well made, not without its faults, but has like a beginning, middle, and end that makes sense. The embellishments and changes from the books are largely okay. The tone is consistent, or when it changes, it makes sense. Goblin Town's weird.
I
But
just cannot forgive the naked fountain swimming. I know that's only extended edition,
no,
but
but it's a weird choice, and I don't like it.
It's haunted me
Okay,
ever
okay. I
since
will
I
say
saw it.
Rivendell is honestly a bigger blemish than Goblin Town because, again,
Mhm.
elves are not, even in Lord of the Rings, they are not dour, sad, constantly sad beings like
Who only eat salad.
who only eat salad. What a ridiculous choice. Tralalali, like, Corey Olson pointed this out, and I 100% agree with him. Gildor was totally a Tralalali elf.
Mhm.
Like those were Noldorin elves probably, or Sindarin, which is like a step down in the caste system. But anyway, like, those are old, wise people. But
Yeah.
like, watch the way they joke with Bilbo in the Hall of Fire. Like,
Yeah.
they're poking fun at him like
Oh
it's
yeah.
the Hobbit. Like,
Oh yeah.
don't dip your beard in the foam, father. Like, that's totally, like, it's very consistent. And so Peter's choice with all of the, he was fine with Legolas, but otherwise the elves are kind of off. Galadriel's okay.
Legolas is. Are you talking about in The Hobbit?
It
Legolas?
No, no,
Who?
no.
Oh, you
I'm
mean?
just talking Peter's choice of
Yeah.
elves in the Lord of the. He kind of set
Oh,
himself
sure.
up to be screwed in the Hobbit with
Yeah.
elves because he chose to make them kind of one note. Well, I shouldn't say one note. They're more complex than that, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that yeah, Legolas doesn't get to talk enough in the movies for us to really
That's true.
know. But I think that Galadriel, I feel like she's good. You know what? She's kind of wise and scary, but when she smiles, you feel,
That's true. That's well, and that's because she has some of the most lines of any of the
yeah.
elves that we meet. Elrond, I love Hugo, but they kind of kind of did him a little dirty because
Yeah, he
where's
was too
where's
grumpy.
kind of summer?
Where's kind of summer, and I will say though that there are some moments in unexpected journey with him and Gandalf that I think are pretty sweet. Like it does
True,
feel like old friends coming together again,
true.
but they just went so it was so heavy on like both like the dwarves. It's like they can't have like a civilized meal to save their lives,
Hmm.
and the elves just like around them didn't make it any better. Like it was just too harsh, you know what I mean? And
It
then
was.
Legolas is so mean in the Hobbit movies. Like,
And to justify it, they make his dad super abusive, like
yeah,
weird.
it's yeah,
I don't like it one bit. I don't
it's
like it
just
one bit.
a lot going on, and it's I personally don't know how to feel a lot of the time. You know what I mean? Because we
I
don't
don't
have any
either.
rest. We don't have any downbeats. It's just
But
constant.
again, that's why this is a good chapter to kind of take a break from the movies, even though we've been talking about the movies a lot. Um, because it is one of those downbeats. Like we get a moment to reflect on who Thorin is, who Bilbo is, to a lesser extent, who the other characters are.
Mm-hmm.
And one really good example of this is so Bilbo, it makes that point about he keeps his head clearer than the others
Yes.
from the bewitchment, but
Yeah, he is over it. Like once
he's
he gets the
done.
mithril shirt, then he's like, okay,
Can we leave now?
yeah, like he's literally like, what next?
How are we gonna leave?
I know, and I love that he says we are armed, but what good has any armor ever been against Smaug the Dreadful? And that's one of those I'm like, obviously doesn't say it in the movie, but it's almost like it kind of is. It just makes me think of like the gold again, right?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, yes.
Bilbo's not thinking that way in the movie. Um,
Exactly, exactly.
but it is smart, and Thorin is like, "Oh shit, yeah,
He snaps out of it in a way that he does not in the movies. Like
facts."
they very much set him up to be as obsessed as his grandfather was.
Mm-hmm.
Like in that prologue scene in the
Yeah.
first movie where we see his grandfather like no like to
No.
like it's like that again. Like why
Did
did
you
you
play his grandfather?
I'm very good at saying the word no like dwarves do.
Hmm.
Here's my Gimli walking into the Hall of
Oh,
Marzabul.
oh, yes.
No.
Oh. Okay, I caught the giggles, and
Oh no. Oh no.
yeah.
Anyway, um yeah, Thorin snaps out of it. Sorry, I made you giggle.
No, that's good. It's good.
Okay, and
um.
this is where like strategy comes back in. So like
Mhm.
a criticism people have of the beginning of this book is that like the dwarves show up with instruments but no tools or weapons.
Hey, those are my people. I
Same,
love that. I love
same.
that about them.
I love that too. But here, like they keep it on, but they cover it up with their old ragged cloaks and stuff again. Like that's so smart. Like, hey, let's not make ourselves shiny as we walk through the
Yeah.
like good,
Fair. Smart. Yeah.
wise, even.
Yeah, and it's I do love that they talk about how Thorin like knows all the passages. I think they might reference that in the movie, like that he hasn't forgotten what Erebor looks like on the inside, but
I think they do. I don't
I think they
remember
do
it,
too.
but like
It's probably written down somewhere in my notebook. But
watching the movie though, and you're like, how the hell did they know where to go? Well, in
mm-hmm.
the book, they explain it, and so that actually was like, okay, Thorin knows his way around his old kingdom. Like that makes sense. Like, okay, cool, I like it. Um, Good job, Peter, for once.
Yeah. With that, I mean, there's like all this like walking around, and they see like rotting tables and like bones and stuff, and slight Cause of Doom vibes, but
Yes.
not quite.
Not to the point that Peter decided with like the entombed dead like dwarf family in that one place that was so sad and
Oh,
creepy.
that was creepy.
Yes.
Um, but one of the things that I really liked about this part is, like, I know that Tolkien's writing isn't necessarily for everybody,
Yes.
but when they're on this path trying to get to the front gate, and they find the beginnings of the running river, which is the river that they came up after leaving the
Yes.
long lake. It says, out of a dark opening in a wall of rock there issued a boiling water, and it flowed swirling in a narrow channel carved and made straight and deep by the cunning of ancient hands. Beside it ran a stone-paved road, wide enough for many men abreast. Swiftly along this they ran, and round a wide-sweeping turn, and behold, before them stood the broad light of day. In front of them rose a tall arch, still showing the fragments of old carven work within, worn and splintered and blackened though it was. A misty sun sent its pale light between the arms of the mountain, and beams of gold fell on the pavement at the threshold. And, I say that, like, I know that not everybody loves like certain details that he provides or like his writing style, but for me, like when I read paragraphs like this, I can't help but feel like completely immersed in the story. And
Just
that's
hearing you read it, same.
and it's like it's not something that I get in the movies, you guys. It's
No.
not something that you're gonna get in the movies. So, it's like it's as if I'm along this long march with them and suddenly
Yes.
struck by this moment after having been in darkness for so long.
And just
And
before that, we get the sweeter air. We get this hopeful, like they're getting to this place of memory, the chamber
mm-hmm.
of Thror of feasting and council, and then they come from that to this, like, oh, that's so good, and it feels so dwarven. Like
Yeah.
it's a way, like this is an example of a passage that's could be in the Lord of the Rings. Like this is not written. This is not a section written for children. It's just describing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's distinctly dwarven in feel, in my opinion, because of those ancient hand
Yeah,
comments and things. Like, oh,
yeah, like the things about like how why I don't know, just like the architectural differences, I feel
yes,
like that
exactly.
you're not gonna like nothing made by an elf is gonna be described in this way,
Right,
or
exactly.
men or whatever.
Yes, except maybe the Numenorians, but again, that's like a crafting culture,
Yeah.
right? Like, anyway,
So I mean, this is basically like they come out and they see the front gate, and Bilbo is like, "You guys, I love this because the way that it's written, it really implies that Bilbo's trying to say like, please let us stop and take a break. I'm starving."
yes,
But they were like, he's like, is there not like some place we can go to like rest, have a bite? And they're like, oh yeah, 5 hours march away. And he
yeah.
was like, no.
He's still a hobbit. Like he still needs his yummies.
What I wouldn't give for Martin Freeman to do this scene.
I know.
I'm just saying, they got so many things right and so many things wrong at the same
Mhm,
time
mhm, mhm,
with these
mhm.
movies. Because I would have loved that, like not dissimilar to when he's like fanning Smaug's smelly breath away from him, where he could just be like, "All right, okay, we made it. We figured out how to get out of here. Time to eat." And
Yes.
then they're like, "Oh yeah, 5 hours march." Um, I mean, and that's kind of uneventful. But I mean, did you have any? I definitely want to talk about the very end.
I do too. The one thing I will say is we don't know how long the sequence of them in the treasure chamber takes, but I don't think it was all that long. I don't think it was like 5 hours.
No.
So the fact that they come out and it's late morning tells
Mm-hmm.
me that Bilbo's like bucking up could
Mm-hmm.
could have been around when Smaug died, but I think it was probably a little bit after.
Yeah. I kind of think it was too, but you know,
or before. I don't know. It's weird.
it's
How?
it's hard to say.
Because I don't know. We'll find out next chapter
Yeah.
how long it took.
Yeah, right. Like at what point was it nighttime?
I think it
But
was still nighttime because it was nighttime when he flew down there.
but did it say how many like nights or whatever they were in there? I don't know. If it did, I didn't write it down. But I feel like we're supposed to not be able to tell because they can't tell.
I think you're right. I think that was intentional, and I actually really like that.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Someone has probably figured it out. In fact, I bet if I went and got Hammond and Skull's Tolkien Reader's Companion, which I don't have.
Mm.
I have the Lord of the Rings one, but they did one for like they like annotated a lot of his stuff, and I in
Mm.
there they talk about like the moon phases and stuff. So they actually like Durin's
Oh.
day is not always the same date,
Right. I knew that.
and like they say, yeah, oh yeah, of course, because they talk about like we don't remember how to figure out when it is. So we know what date it is this time, but we don't know
Mm.
when it always is. Well, Tolkien was consistent enough with his moon phases that you can figure out the lunar calendar and figure out how long it takes for Durin's Day to happen.
Psycho.
Right? Um,
Love him, but he's a nut.
so yeah, they walk 5 miles or 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have anything else there. What did you want to talk about at the end?
At the end, so I have here that it's like what like we've talked about this. There's no mystery about where Smog has gone, but I do wonder if they will make any reference to the way this chapter ends, where it says, "In all their talk, they came perpetually back to one thing: where was Smaug? They looked west, and there was nothing." And east, there was nothing. And in the south, there was no sign of the dragon, but there was a gathering of very many birds. At that they gazed and wondered, but they were no nearer understanding it when the first cold stars came out. So,
I'll leave that for you because I like half remember this
oh
part.
god. But do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
we'll see.
it's interesting. There are two just interesting little annotations. So the paragraph that starts under the rocky wall to the right there was no path, so on they trudged through the stones. Anyway, in the first edition, the 1970 or 1937 edition, it says, "So on they trudged among the stones on the left side of the river. To the right, the rocky wall above the water was sheer and pathless, and the emptiness and desolation." And then the revised one is, "Under the rocky wall to the right, there was no path. So on they trudged among the stones on the left side of the river, and the emptiness and the desolation." I think he just changed that because it makes more sense the way it's
Mm-hmm.
currently written, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more obvious, like the how the wall works and stuff. The
Yeah.
other thing is the thing about the word cram.
Oh yes, they eat some cram on the way.
Yes, they
Which
eat
is
some
not
cram.
what Bilbo meant as far as
Nope.
getting a snack.
And how interesting. So okay, in this book alone, where they don't have Lembas by name. I don't think you could argue they have Lembas in Rivendell because only Galadriel knows how to make that.
Mm.
Because she learned it from Melian.
Yeah.
But so they have like the Bannocks, like the I just imagine them as like uncut hamburger buns.
Okay.
That's just what I imagine a Bannock to look like.
Uh-huh.
And then they have Beorn's cakes.
Honey
Give me
cakes.
those honey cakes. They sound
Ugh,
fucking good.
they really
And
do.
then they have cram. So they have these like three baked goods from different cultures or people
Right.
that achieve essentially the same thing. Like you get food, you eat, cool, but cram is the
Yeah.
grossest, and I think that's
Yeah,
interesting.
and it's the men of Lake Town, or this was one of the things that they got from them.
Yes,
Obviously needed. You gotta
clearly,
have something that can stay a while with no refrigeration or anything.
yes.
So thank you. But y'all need Bayarn's recipe.
At least some
stat.
honey mixed into the cram. Come on
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So that was obviously one of the best ones that they've had on this
Oh,
track.
it's so funny. I said it needs honey because so the annotation is cram is an Elvish word. In the etymologies, Tolkien's list of Elvish word relations published in the volume 5 of the Histories of Middle Earth called The Last Road. He derived cram from the stem krab to meaning press. He also noted that it is
Like
a
I am depressed by eating this crab.
I'm crabby. Crab.
Mm.
That's the stem. No, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He
Mm-hmm.
also noted that it is a cake of compressed flour or meal, often containing honey and milk, used on long journeys.
I feel like theirs didn't have honey.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
It's just flour. They're
It
basically just eating flour.
literally they are eating like if you made your own Play-Doh as a kid with flour
Yes. Yes.
when it got
That's
hard, they're eating that.
ew.
That's
Oh.
literally what I have. Like 5-year-old Nick, who put entirely too many things in his mouth. I know what Play-Doh tastes like because of 5-year-old Nick, and that's what cram has tasted like in my mind ever since.
Yeah. It's definitely not good.
No,
It's I
it
mean, it's
gross.
something. But yeah, that's what they're eating on this sad little walk.
Then they get to the guard room,
Yep.
which I
Yep.
always forget is big.
Yes, it's kind of huge.
Yeah, like it could fit 100 people in it. What?
I just and for what? For why?
Yeah, especially why when you consider how
They have
unaware.
parties there?
Right,
Maybe.
like I think in the next chapter, or I think in the next chapter that involves the dwarves, they talk about it as a guard tower. Um, or maybe it's this one, and I'm just forgetting.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely say what it is.
Yeah, but like they were so unawares that smog was coming.
Yes.
So it's just I mean, like hubris is another theme of Tolkien's work, like the folly of having too much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so many annotations in the next chapter.
Oh boy. Well, so in the next chapter, I know that it's gonna be it's definitely the start of the movie. It kind of just gets right into it with basically what Smog goes off to do. So we're gonna head back to Lake Town for fire and water, and officially start Battle of the Five Armies because it just didn't feel right to watch it just yet. But before we go, let us not forget to remind people where they can follow you, Nick.
Namely, I co host a podcast. Fancy that. Everyone's a podcaster these days. Uh, about the band Me Without You. We're called Us Without Them. Haha.
Cute.
If nothing else, I came up with that name. So I could. But if you're interested in my Tolkien takes, I talk about Tolkien in every single episode. So
You just can't get away from
I
it, can ya?
can't. Well, okay. I will go on a very brief tangent about that, which is they're a Christian band.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Christian, but I love music that is deeply rooted in themes and Tolkien's Catholicism and how that bleeds into his work.
Mm-hmm.
I it helps me better understand the Christian and Jewish and Muslim themes because they're a complicated band with lots of that stuff. But like his
Oh.
theological themes that bleed into it even unintentionally help me understand how that happens to that band. So I don't know.
Nice.
It's cool that way.
It cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So give Nick a listen.
please.
He as you can tell, I hope that you can tell that he's one of my favorite people.
Oh,
So
you're one of mine. And Callie is too, but she wasn't here, so that's sad.
yeah, we all know Callie is the queen, light of our lives. Um, so and you will see her next time,
Yes, you
very
will.
soon. And of course, don't forget to follow Talking with Friends.
Please.
Subscribe and follow along wherever you like to listen to podcasts if you haven't already. You can also find this episode on YouTube. Hopefully, if you're not watching it already, season 2 is on YouTube, so I feel pretty good about that. Yeah, so we will see you next time.
Bye.